Hi, I'm Heather from Creative Kiwi Embroidery, and I've put together this video showing how we make the In the Hoop Zodiac Notebook covers. Now there's actually two videos here and two options for the design. You can make them in, smaller hoops in 3 parts, or we do have for the larger hoops a one hooping option. Now this video just shows the techniques involved in making the actual notebooks. All the information on cutting sizes, notebook cover sizes, hoop sizes are in the written instructions that are included in the download file. Now I actually made these notebook covers for my girls for Christmas, but I'm sure you won't find that great for gift giving at any time of the year. Nothing better than getting something handmade and personalised for you. Now you can see there I've got a couple of samples of the designs. So they all have the Zodiac on the front cover, and on the back cover there is actually this constellation stars to go with the sign. I'm going to start this video with the 3 hooping notebook cover. It's a bit hard to see in the picture, but you do the back with the flap, you do the front with the flap, and then on the 3rd hooping we join them all together with the spine. Now the sample I'm showing in this video is the Cancer 3-part notebook cover, and it's an A6 size. So let's get started. Now the first thing is the stabiliser. Now I just use a no-show mesh cutaway stabiliser, but I do use the pinning method that's shown here. So let's get into it. So basically the first stitch is just the outline of the back of the notebook cover, and you just stitch this onto the stabiliser. Now, just to make it easier for later, it does pay just to use a pen and just mark those outlines or the guidelines just a little further out. Now, we've got the 2 sides, and we have got a position there for a tab if you want to use a tab. The next part is to actually place your batting over that guideline, and you can see there I use a fusible fleece, and it's about 1/4 of an inch wide. And that's just being stitched down there. What we're going to do here is just cut away the excess batting. And you'll see there's a gap around the edge. And what that is I'm just ensuring that it's taking all the batting out of the seams. So it's just going to make it look and sit nice. Next thing is just to place your fabric. Now this is the back portion of the notebook, and you're placing the fabric with the right side up. Now we're off to the machine, and the next step is just to stitch that top portion down. Now I'm using black thread here, a neutral thread, whatever colour. These are the construction parts, so you can use any colour really. But the next step is just the background quilting on the back of the notebook. Now again, I've just used black because I like it being a behind the scenes type thing. You can use a contrast if you prefer. And the next colour is just your star constellations. And obviously you probably want a contrast on that one. Now the next step is we're actually going to add the closing flap on the back of the hoop. So you're going to use those lines. Now if you wanted to have a tab, if you've done any of our other notebooks, you can have a closing tab, and it is included. I have not done them on the sample, but I'm just showing you what those guidelines were for. Otherwise, you just use the 2 guidelines on the sides, or the top and the bottom of the hoop. And what that's going to be, I'm just cutting a bit of fabric off so you can see them, is our folded piece of flap fabric makes the flap, and we're going to put that folded edge along those lines. You can tape that flap in place if you prefer. I'm a bit naughty. I just go straight to the sewing, to the machine. It's completely personal preference. Now the next stitch I've done in a contrast colour to show you, but you would do it the same colour as the notebook. And that's just going to be stitching the flap down. And that's it. That is actually the back of the notebook made. So we're just going to take the design out of the hoop. Don't lose those pins. And we're just going to cut away the excess fabric. You need to keep a seam allowance here. Now I use maybe 1.5 centimetres or maybe just over 1/4 of an inch. Just whatever seam allowance you are actually comfortable with. And don't worry, you're probably better to leave a larger seam allowance at this point and cut it closer later. But you can see I'm just right around that edge, just cutting a seam allowance. On the other side, I know it's hard to see on the black, but against your other seam, we're going to cut that as close as we can to the stitch line. This is going to be where we join it in the third hooping. So, as I say, just as close as you can to that stitch line. So now we're just going to do the second part, or the front part of the notebook, and it's made the same way as what we've just done on the back. So you hoop your cutaway stabiliser using your pins, and you stitch that first outline onto the stabiliser. You place your batting over the top, and we're going to stitch that down. I'm sure you know what's next. We're just going to cut away that excess batting, and remembering that there is a gap between the original outline and just where we've put the batting. Again, we're just going to place our front fabric over the guideline, right side facing up, and stitch that down. Now we just need to do the embroidery on the front of the design. So again, I've done the next lot in black. I call it the background quilting. So it's just the lines behind the design. Our next colour is the frame, which is your sun and your moon. And then the last part is the actual zodiac design and lettering. And you can just use whatever colours you choose for that. So that's the front portion finished. And again, we're just going to do the same as we did before. We're going to add our flap. You can see why you mark those out a bit further than we have on the design. Again, the folded edge is placed on those guidelines and off to the machine and stitch it down. If you prefer, tape your fabric down. It is completely personal preference. So that's the front of the notebook made. So again, just cut away all the excess fabric, leaving a reasonable seam allowance. Excuse my dogs in the background. Now I think on this one, yes, if you find it hard, you can turn the design over and you can see, obviously with the black it was hard to see the line, but we've got it there on that one. Now we're going on to the third part, which is the spine. Same as before, you're going to stitch it out, the outline on your stabilizer, place your piece of batting over the guideline and attach that, and then cut away the excess batting. So same steps as we did before. Again, there's a little gap there. Not quite as much on the spine, because we're joining it together. Placing your spine fabric with the right side facing up, just over that guideline, and attaching it. Now I've got purple thread in the machine at this point, matching. You can use any colour, because you attach the spine, and then the next step is the quilting on the spine, which again is done in purple. Now we're going to start joining these designs together. So we're going to do the back or the left side first. So what we need to do is we're going to just cut away that excess fabric on the left hand side. Now using some tape. Now in New Zealand we call it masking tape or painter's tape, just any kind of tape. Not too sticky so it doesn't come off, but enough that it holds. Now you're matching your stitch lines here. So the top stitch line with the bottom stitch line. But I'm actually going to tell you that you do not need to be absolutely perfect on this, because what happens is when we attach the lining, you're in the seam allowance at this point. So what you want to do is make sure that down the middle, you can see that's where the seam line is going to be. So, as I say, you don't have to be pinpoint accurate on the little top and bottom, but along this edge you do, because the next step is to take it to the machine. Now this is sped up, so you wouldn't go that fast. And the machine's just going to stitch a zigzag stitch. Now you can stop and start, you can slow it down. You can see I've slowed it down, stopped it there just to make sure that I was happy with the join. I'm sure I'll show you here. Yes. What you're looking for is that the zigzag has caught both sides. Now if it hasn't, unfortunately you need to go back and redo it. But that's joined the design. And later on we'll put a satin stitch over it, but it does need to be covering both at that point. Now we're going to stitch or attach the front of the notebook, or the right hand side when you have the hoop correct. So the same. Make sure you've got the design in the right orientation, so you've got it facing up down. And again, just tape along the stitch lines. You're matching the stitch lines. And you can see, because you've already cut a seam allowance, it's not going to match at the top. You can see the flat portion's got a longer seam allowance. Let's say this isn't going to matter. It's as long as you've got it matching along that spine, along the inside bit there. Again, you're back to your machine. And you're just going to zigzag that joining stitch. Now I've used the thread here of the spine because the next step is to do your satin stitch edge. So it just saves you having to change colour. So there we go, the magic of video. We've just finished that satin stitch along both edges. So that's joined your notebook cover together. The next step is just to add your lining. Now, it's hard with the black fabric, but you're going to have the wrong side facing up this time for your lining. See, if I was to use that scrap of fabric, you have the wrong side facing up. This is going to be inside the notebook. You won't actually see it, but it's there. So we're just going to place it over the entire hoop, and it's going to stitch just along the top there and complete the top of the top and bottom of the notebook and create a lining. So here we go at the machine, and it just stitches along the top and then just along the bottom. Now that's it, you've made the notebook. Now we just get to the exciting part, trimming it all up and turning it. So like normal, we're just cutting away the excess stabiliser. And just at that on the back there, I mean, you wouldn't even need to do that step. You're not going to see that, but I'm just trimming it out, the stabiliser. Now, important, in the corners you need to be clipping the corners. This is just, again, helps the cover sit nicely and have nice corners. And now we're going to start turning. So the first time you're going to turn it, and you're going to think, this isn't going to work. But we have to turn 2 times. So that is your lining. Okay, and so it will look a bit strange, but then we get to the next point where we actually turn the flaps out. Yeah, you need to try and get into those corners and make them nice, as flat as you can. So we get to that point. You can see the idea behind the notebook at that point. There I am getting the scissors in there. But your iron, please don't forget to iron at this point. Obviously it still looks a little bit, not quite straight, but when you actually put all your edges out and then give it a nice iron, you're going to end up with a beautiful notebook cover. For those of you with the larger hoops, I'm just going to show you how you can make the same design or make a notebook cover in one hooping. So very similar process. Basically you're just going to hoop your one layer of cutaway stabiliser and stitch the first line, which is the outline. The next step is to, as we did before, place your batting over the guideline and just stitch to attach that. And as before, and I'm sorry I didn't video it properly, you're going to remove it from the hoop and cut away the excess batting. And I have also just lengthened those guidelines with my pen. The next thing we're going to do is just place your notebook fabric over that guideline, and its right side of fabric is facing up. We take that off to the machine, and it's just going to stitch that entire piece of fabric down. Now I've put a contrast spine on my notebook. You can choose to just leave it the one colour if you like, but what we have here is just a stitch placement line for your spine. And there we go, I've just placed that over the guideline and we're just stitching it down. So we take the hoop from the machine and we're just going to cut on the left and right hand side, just so that we've got a nice, we're going to zigzag that's your spine. After the machine, and using this red colour that you're using for the spine, you're just going to zigzag those raw edges, and that's just to keep everything nicely together for when we do all the embroidery on the front of the hoop. So we've got that zigzag stitch in the spine colour. It's then going to do just the quilting on the spine, and then it's off to do all the different colours, just like we did in the 3 hooping version. So by the magic of video, I'm not going to make you watch everything stitch out, but you're just doing the quilting on the back of the notebook cover, the quilting and the design on the front of the cover, and then as you can see here, we're just doing the satin stitch for the spine. So you can see the detail there. Again, if you were going to put a closing tab, you would put it on those guidelines that are marked on the stabilizer. Otherwise, we're just going to put the folds or the flaps of the cover, and they are again the folded edge of the fabric along those guidelines that we've marked already on the stabilizer. You can do it both sides. I have taped those in place on this one. Then we're off to the machine and just going to stitch the next 2 colours which stitch down those flaps. And we're nearly there really. The next thing we need to do is just add the lining. Now I've just done it at the hoop. You're more than welcome to take the hoop off the machine and do it on a flat surface. I've just, as I say, done it at the hoop, and basically it's just putting that lining fabric with the wrong side facing up over the top of that entire hoop guideline, and then just stitching the next 2 colours which just attach that. And that's it. That's your notebook cover made completely in one hooping. Now I've just really sped through the finishing because it's exactly the same as the 3-part notebook cover. So you're just going to cut away the excess stabilizer, leaving a seam allowance. Clip those corners and do the 2 lots of folds. Take it off to the iron. So I thought I'd finish with a couple of the samples that I made. So the Aquarius notebook was made in the size D composition size notebook. And then we've got the first one, the Wee Cancer, that's just in an A6 notebook. The next 3, I think, are all done in A5 size. And you can just see each notebook has the zodiac sign on the front and then the stars that relate to that on the back. So I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. Thank you for watching, and I'd love to see all the notebooks that you make.